Honda. More than $200 billion in total company value. The best-selling motorcycle manufacturer on Earth for decades running. Formula One victories, the Civic, the Accord, engines in jets, boats, and robots, a name that became synonymous with the word reliable. And the man who built it, he forged his family's stamp out of a rubber bicycle pedal to hide his failing grades from his father. He showed up to his first job in Tokyo at 15 years old and spent months babysitting his employer's child instead of touching a single engine. And before any of that, he grew up in a poverty-stricken village at the foot of Mount Fuji, the son of a blacksmith, with no money, no connections, and no formal education. No degree, no capital, no plan. You would think a boy like that could never build one of the most powerful car companies in human history, right? Well, Soichiro Honda did exactly that. And this is how. To find out, we have to go back to November 17, 1906. Komyo Village, 1906. A place of muddy lanes, rice paddies, and the clang of iron from a blackened forge. Here, Soichiro Honda was born into a world with little to spare. His father, Gihei, hammered away at plowshares and bicycle frames, his hands forever stained with oil and soot. The workshop was their lifeline and Soichiro's playground, a jumble of broken spokes, rusty gears, and half-mended wheels. Even as a boy, he was restless. He'd sneak tools from the bench, take apart anything with a screw or spring, and sometimes forget to put it back together. There was never enough money, but there was always something to fix. School bored him. Numbers and kanji blurred on the page, so he found another way to pass. With a bicycle pedal and a sharp knife, he carved a makeshift family seal, stamping over his failing grades before handing the report to his teacher. He got caught, of course, but the trick said more about his mind than any lesson in the classroom. Rules bent for him or broke. He was drawn to machines, not marks. One afternoon, the impossible thundered through the village, a Ford Model T spitting dust and smoke. Soichiro dropped his chores and chased it, pedaling furiously after the car, shouting that he would catch that thing. Years later, he would remember that moment as the day he fell in love with movement, with speed, with the promise of what could be built. In a place where most boys followed their fathers into the fields, Soichiro Honda was already dreaming of engines. Even poverty could not keep him still. In 1922, Soichiro Honda arrived in Tokyo at 15, carrying only a suitcase and a letter. The Art Shokai garage was nothing like his father's forge. Here, engines gleamed and the air buzzed with possibility. Honda started at the bottom, sweeping floors, fetching tea, even babysitting the owner's son while mechanics worked on Daimlers and Lincolns. He watched every move, memorizing the rhythm of the shop. Yuzo Sakakibara, the owner, noticed his persistence and handed him broken carburetors and battered pistons. Honda worked late, learning through trial and error, refusing to give up until the parts came back to life. By 1924, he had earned a place on the team building a race car from a salvaged Curtiss aircraft engine. Honda tuned the machine himself, coaxing speed from its battered frame. At the Japanese Motor Car Championship that year, the Curtiss finished second, beating factory teams with far more resources. It was a turning point. A blacksmith's son from Shizuoka had made his mark. In 1927, Honda set a Japanese speed record, pushing a modified Curtiss to 120 kilometers per hour. In 1936, racing near Tokyo, his car collided with a truck. The crash left him broken and ended his racing career. In that hospital bed, Honda realized he would have to build, not just drive. 50 piston rings. That's what Soichiro Honda brought to Toyota inspectors. Out of all of them, only 3 passed. The rest, 47, were tossed aside, each stamped with a red rejection mark. The message was blunt: not good enough for Toyota engines, not fit for the future of Japanese industry. Most men would have quit. Honda, instead, treated each failed ring like a lesson. He filled notebooks with sketches, numbers, and questions. Why did they crack? Why did they warp? What was missing in the steel? Honda didn't have a university degree, but he became a student all the same. He sat in the back of metallurgy classes at Tokyo Institute of Technology, scribbling diagrams about heat treatment and carbon content. He stayed up late, rereading his notes, chasing the mystery of hardness and flexibility. He reached out to professors, pored over technical manuals, and ran experiments in his own workshop, heating, quenching, measuring, breaking, and starting again. The breakthrough came with a new alloy, chromium and molybdenum mixed into the steel. The process was slow, the learning painful, but the next batch, after months of trial and error, finally met Toyota's standards. Honda's failure rate had become his laboratory. Each rejection was data, each mistake a step forward. For Soichiro Honda, failure wasn't the end of the story. It was the method. Factories that once buzzed with promise fell silent under the roar of American B-29s. In April 1945, the Yamashita plant, built from years of sweat and stubbornness, was ripped apart in a single night. Charred beams, twisted steel, and the smell of burnt oil were all that remained. 2 months later, the bombers returned. This time, nothing was spared. The war had no patience for dreams or for men who built things from scratch. Even nature seemed to conspire against Soichiro Honda. That summer, the ground shook with the force of the Nankai earthquake. Concrete floors cracked, windows shattered. The Iwata workshop, battered but standing, was left with scars, fractures in the foundation, broken panes, tools scattered across the floor. Insurance claims would later call it minor damage, but for a man who had lost nearly everything, every break felt personal. With the war lost and his factories in ruins, Honda faced an empty ledger. The only way forward was to sell what little remained. In the chaos of 1945, he handed the remnants of Tokai Seiki to Toyota for 450,000 yen. It was a fraction of what he had built, barely enough to count as seed money. Years of work were reduced to a single line in someone else's account book. For most, this would have been the end. For Honda, it was the blank page he needed. In the aftermath of war, Soichiro Honda stood among the ruins with little more than a stubborn will and a mind tuned for invention. Factories were gone, money was scarce, but the streets of Japan were littered with abandoned engines, scrap left behind by the military. Honda saw not junk, but opportunity. In 1946, he gathered a dozen engineers in a drafty wooden shed and founded the Honda Technical Research Institute. 12 men, battered tools, and a mountain of surplus engines became the raw material for something new. They worked late into the night, stripping, tinkering, coaxing life from cast-off motors. Honda drafted a letter. 18,000 bicycle shops received it. 3,000 replied. Each reply was a lifeline, a small vote of confidence. The team's first creation was simple, a bicycle powered by a clipped-on engine. It was noisy and rough. The first batch, known as the Type D, rattled with flaws, oil leaks, crankcase cracks, a ride as rough as the roads they traveled. But every problem turned into a lesson. Honda's crew logged each failure, reworked each part, and kept moving. Scarcity forced them to be clever. Simplicity became their creed. Out of war's leftovers and a handful of stubborn hands, the first seeds of a world-changing motorcycle were sown. The Super Cub rolled onto the streets in 1958, a $295 machine that did not look like a motorcycle, did not ride like one, and did not care about tradition. It was light enough for a housewife to wheel out of the shed, tough enough for a delivery boy to run all day, and simple enough for a farmer to fix with a wrench and a prayer. The Super Cub did not just sell, it exploded. By the end of the 1960s, Honda was shipping more motorcycles than any company on Earth. The little step-through, with its pressed steel frame and single-cylinder engine, outsold Harley-Davidson and Triumph combined. It won the Emperor's Prize for Design, a rare honor for a machine built to be ordinary. But Soichiro Honda was never satisfied. While rivals doubled down on motorcycles, he saw a bigger road ahead. In 1963, against government advice, Honda threw the company into the car business. The Civic arrived in 1972, just as the world's oil supply tightened and drivers everywhere wanted small, efficient, reliable cars. The Accord soon followed, topping sales charts in America and Europe. By the time Honda was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1989, his name was stamped on factories and racetracks around the globe. When he died in 1991, the world lost a man who built not just engines, but a new idea of what was possible for a poor boy with a stubborn heart and a love of machines. Every engine that bears his name runs on the fuel of relentless failure turned into progress. In a world obsessed with instant success, Honda's legacy is a defiant reminder. Breakthrough is born from broken parts. That truth still drives innovation, and it drives the underdogs today. Share your thoughts below.